For those of you who've just joined us, you are at Safer Streets, Speeding It Up, hosted by the Young Urbanists, supported by Uber South Africa. We have just had Gift light a candle for his brother Ikonya Nyati, who was a pedestrian, 40-year-old pedestrian, run over in a crash in Gauteng. Gift, the date was 20th of June. On the 20th of June. So it's all still very real and painful for Gift right now. Offense, if I could ask you to officially welcome our guests to the session.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am deeply moved by today's conversation. It's long overdue. We initially started this project with the intention of really activating streets, working with young emerging NGOs to create a pathway to save one more life. Little did we know that we would encounter colleagues at the Road Traffic Management Corporation, that we would encounter the team at the Young Urbanists, and of course the help of Rihanna. We would create a platform for this type of conversation around road safety. Today, we're seeing at least 14,000 fatalities a year, 1.2 to 1.8 million crashes on our roads per year. And this ripples right through people's families. It ripples through people's livelihoods. And there's no way to measure what this is worth. So the goal for us was to create a summit that would at least inspire some kind of dialogue. And the outcome was a summit that inspired action, collaboration, and invited people like yourself to really engage in finding ways to really address the road safety issues on the ground in real time. At the end of the day, how we measure success is not just through conversation, but it is simply through tangibly seeing that one more life was saved. It's really how we measure the impact of this project. So this session is really about collaboration. It's really about conversation. We're here to showcase what we've done together in the last 6 months since the Road Safety Summit. But most importantly, we're here to invite you to help us build out the next phase of this project, where we are really going to get into finding the actual locations where high fatalities do take place. Firstly. Secondly, mapping out precisely how we could intervene and practically intervening. That's our goal. So by the end of the year, if not early next year, the first cycle of interventions should at least start becoming visible. And the question is, why Uber cares? Why are we involved in this type of conversation when we only represent 2 to 6% of the traffic volumes in the country from a public transport perspective? Well, we care because any rider could be affected, whether they're on a trip or they're just walking in the street or they're just cycling or they're in a bus or they're in a taxi. So it's not really for us. It's just that we felt compelled that we should enable this kind of discussion and facilitate some degree of action to the best of our abilities. So I invite you all to do the same where possible, and feel free to find opportunities for you individually in your personal capacity or in your professional capacity to see that touch point and collaborate to achieve this simple goal to save one more life. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you all being there.
Thank you, Offense, and thank you to Uber South Africa for the role that you are playing. along with many others who are on this call. So seeing some friends who were at the Road Safety Summit, seeing colleagues and friends who were at one of the 3 roundtables. And going to ask you right now, maybe if you could just use the chat box. In one sentence, give us a sense of who you are and why you've chosen to join this session this afternoon. So if you'd use the chat box, Aisha, lovely to see you. I know we met Siko out in Durban when the roundtable happened there. But if we could ask people, please use the chat box and just your name, the organization you may be representing, and why you've chosen to join this session today. Siko, City People Ituqueni, thank you for kicking it off. Going to ask the rest of you to do the same. Fahima, if we could bring the mural board back up, please, just so that as people are putting their stuff in the chat, I'm just going to give you a sense of how we're going to be spending our time together this afternoon. We're going to move in a minute. So Offense has welcomed us and officially opened the session. You're checking in on the chat box, but we're also going to do a bit of a traffic light check-in in a few minutes. Roland Posma from Young Urbanists and the Active Mobility Forum will be giving us some of the highlights from the Safer Streets initiative. We'll then have the opportunity to be in conversation with each other, and that's where we really want your attendance here to be more than just listening. We're really keen to hear about your perspectives, the work that you do. I'm already seeing amazing people doing amazing work. Dr. Lee Randall from the Road Ethics Project, Najin from Smart Communities, we've got Dr. Mawabo from WITS, interested in walkability and neighborhood design. Hanifa, a good friend in the public transport space and lead for public transport at City Support Program, National Treasury. So really, really grateful. For the rest of you, please do introduce yourself in the chat. And we want to bring your voices, your perspectives into the conversation. Roland will then take us through the next steps in this program. It's not an overnight quick fix. But we definitely do want to speed it up. And Susan, our friend from Shonaquip, lovely to have you in the room with us. And then we will converse again about the next steps and we will close the session. We certainly intend to release you at 4 o'clock. So at this point, allow me then to take you through the traffic light check. So this is, we're notorious in South Africa for not obeying the colors of the traffic light. But in this instance, really just a simple check. If you know little to nothing about the Safer Streets initiative, it's going to be a red. If you know a bit, it's a yellow. And if you know green, you're on top of it. So I am going to just very quickly launch the poll, which should be here. It was here a minute ago. If not, I'm going to ask you just to use your chat box. And okay, there's the poll. So please just give us a sense of your knowledge of the Safer Streets initiative. Thank you. Okay, so we've got a wonderful mix of people who know something, they know a little bit, people who've joined and know little to nothing about Safer Streets, and then people who are like, I am on top of it. And so let's take the opportunity then, those of you who have 6 of you, 24% of the attendees who have voted in the poll, who know something or are on top of the Safer Streets initiative, to give us a sense of what you know. And I'm going to ask that it not be Offense or Roland, that it be other people who voted green. If you just give me an indication. if you're one of the people who knows something about safer streets and would like to, or knows quite a bit about it, if you'd like to come in, just raise your virtual hand or just unmute and let me know that you'd like to speak. So anyone who voted that they're on top of it, that would be great. Or if you voted that you know something a little bit and you want to share a little bit that you do know. I know 6 people did say that they're on top of it. Pano, I'm assuming that you're on top of it, Pano.
No.
Okay, Aisha,
Okay.
thank you. You've unmuted, Aisha. Do you want to come in? Okay, I think Aisha's remuted. Pano,
Good
I'm
afternoon,
assuming that
all.
you're
Am I
one of
audible?
those that's on top of it. You want to give us some perspectives here? Please introduce yourself.
Yes, definitely. Hi everyone. I'm Pano Dipoto. I hope I'm audible. Johanna, is that
Yes, we hear you clearly, Pano. A
clear?
little bit
Thank
louder
you
would
so
be
much.
good. Yeah.
All right, no problem. So I'm Pano Dipoto. I'm currently working with young urbanists, and I've had the pleasure of engaging in the 3 Safer Streets Roundtable events that we've had, as well as with the results that we've managed to get from each roundtable. So the main aim was to get people together and just bring about this discussion of safer streets, what we envision safer streets to be, how we can create safer streets, what do these safer streets look like, as well as who can we put together and who is responsible for creating these streets, and as well as what the streets are like currently. So from the
Thanks,
different
Pano. I'm gonna ask you to
that's
hold
it?
it there.
Okay. No
Pano,
problem.
I'm gonna ask you to hold it there. I'm gonna invite in Siko, if you're able to come in. I know that you were at the Durban Roundtable. Would love to get your perspectives on that roundtable or safer streets and how you're seeing the initiative. Siko Msomi.
Yeah, thanks, Rihanna. Thanks for the platform, and great seeing everyone here. Pense, Roland, and Najen also. I think we we were in Tanzania a few weeks ago together at another summit. But I think from my side, it's really about putting people at the center of road safety, and that's really my understanding of it. You know, how do we put human beings, pedestrians, the likes, at the center of how we plan cities? Yes, the modes of transport are important, whether it's cycling, whether it's minibus, taxi, whether it's train, whether it's car, private or public, whether it's plane, absolutely. But I think at a very granular level, it needs to be people-centered. It needs to be about the individuals or the people that interact with space, and I think that's what is critical for us to actually start highlighting in the discussion, to say, how do we formalize, how do we build something that is people-centered? How do we ensure that the intervention, irrespective of what it looks like, it has a person or people at the center? So I think for me, that's important. And I think that was one of the outcomes of our engagements here in Etiquette when we met Rihanna and Roland, to say, how do we ensure that those that are plan with people in mind, plan with children in mind, families in mind, and involve those people also in the planning. So that's also very important. In as much as you do need the learned friends to design cities and design interventions, you still need the voices of people who are going to be interacting with those interventions at some point. So that's my understanding, Rena. Thanks for the platform.
Thanks, Siko. I'm gonna ask Mark and Najin if they want to come in and give a bit of a sense of the Gauteng roundtable. But maybe before we do, we had a young child by the name of Zuko with us in Gauteng. So Fahima, maybe if we can hear from Zuko quickly. Thank you.
My name is Zuko Griffin.
And Zuko, you obviously come with your dad here to Mzini, and then
Yes.
sometimes you need to cross the street over here, right? And tell me what some of the difficulties about having to cross the street?
The difficulties is the cars go way too fast, so we just want them to slow down for the little kids just to slow down for the little kids. Yes. So that's why, because sometimes I have difficulties crossing the road.
So even young Zuko knows that we need to speed up the delivery of safer streets, but we need to slow down motorized transport. Mark, can I invite you in, then Narjan, and then we're going to move it along.
Sure. I think one of the things that we highlighted at our session in Westdean was about the relationship of buildings to street, and how obviously a more interactive interface with the streets and providing of street furniture as well as trees could also have an impact on the streets themselves and how traffic actually responds to the urban environment and urban fabric. So that was quite a strong theme that came up in our walk that we did through Westdean. And obviously, as an architect, I'm interested in what that relationship is between what is the architecture and what is the street actually doing? How do we use the buildings to start slowing traffic down as well?
Thanks, Mark, and thanks to both your architectural eye and your Brixton community activist persona for joining us in Westdean. Narjan, great to know that you and Siko met in Tanzania, but you were also with us at the Gauteng Roundtable.
Yeah, thanks, Rihanna. Yeah, the Gauteng Roundtable was of particular interest to us because of more around the format of how it was run as opposed to the outcomes. Because what was how the approach worked there was quite an inclusive one, bringing stakeholders from various parts of the community and getting them to role play and to solution around what they saw on the streets. And we had an opportunity to talk to a couple of people on the streets as well. And what really shone out from that there are the people actually have the solutions. And we need to be able to hear from the ground what's required, what are the proposed solutions, and then to actually elevate that to the decision makers. And I think that's quite a powerful process that you guys have embarked on. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Narjan. I'm going to move it along in terms of the program and hand over to Roland Posma, who some of you have already referenced, who in many ways held those 3 sessions across the 3 cities, but has also been involved with a lot of other work in the last couple of months. Roland, I'm going to leave it to you to introduce yourself and give us a highlight sense of what Safer Streets actually is about.
Thanks, Fiona, and hi, everyone. If I sound a bit tired, as I've spoken already way too much today, and I will try to minimize my participation in the session because I'm keen to hear from you guys. Just a quick check, you guys can see my screen?
Yes, Roland,
yes,
we see
we can
fine.
see it.
Yes, we can.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Fantastic. So look, I think it's very clear, I think, of course, we just highlighted things, Najin, on that. The process is very important. Of course, we're not government. I see that a few people here are from government, City of Johannesburg, City of Cape Town, City of Ekurhuleni. Thank you so much. And of course, NDOT. So I appreciate you guys being here, and Treasury as well. But we know the solutions. We know the right process, of course, to come to these solutions. But the question we all have here is, is how can we actually make streets safer? So what I just wanted to do, because in conscience of the poll that some of you are not quite sure what we are doing, there's a few of us that are new to the Safer Streets program. I just want to quickly run down in terms of what the program is, what has happened, and where we are going. And again, I want to thank you for everyone for being here today, and in particular for Uber for the support in Safer Streets. And hopefully this is something we can roll out, not just for South Africa, but across SADC and African countries. So as you all can see the first slide, we have this beautiful illustration. And to me, it kind of beautifully captures the diversity of our country, the many role players when it comes to mobility, whether it's the last mile, whether it's disabled, public transportation, minibus taxis. You have an array of stakeholders, and all of them are very important for our economy, for our democracy, for how we bring up our children, our communities, and they have a big part to play. Sadly, as we all know, we don't live in safer streets in the country. I'm not going to repeat the stats or the implications to our economy, the implications to our communities, or the daily implications it has to our lives, because since this call, we have lost a few people on our streets. And in some instances, most of those people are pedestrians. What scares me as a young South African is that we are actually a pedestrian public transportation country, but we have still designed for cars, especially given our great policies in the last 30 years of democracy. There's been some significant strides, significant policy, but of course we have a long way to go. And it's not to criticize government, but it's to how can we work with government hand in hand. So this perhaps comes to this, why are we doing this? We're doing safer streets and speeding it up. And of course, we want cars to slow down, is that we've recognized that to solve this problem, we have to be multidisciplinary. So in terms of this program, we want to work with a variety of stakeholders. We have architects, policymakers, economists, young civil engineers, urban planners, transportation economists, community leaders, facilitators. We want to work with everyone and have a platform that's currently plugged into players like all our big cities. So we're all working with the City of Cape Town, other municipalities, Johannesburg, City of Tshwane, eKwini, but then also big players like the RTMC. We're quite excited with our partnership with the South African Institute of Civil Engineering, and many others that I'm going to mention a bit later. But we want to be open to all stakeholders, and then also we want to be agnostic. We're agnostic for the sense that we recognize a lot of work is in the space, and we do not want to duplicate, rather that we want to bring and plug in and find new ways to make streets safer, because I think enough is enough when it comes to talking about it. We want to do something about it. So given that we want to develop new tools, so how can we have better tools given our austerity crisis that we're having across local governments, given our outdated approach to civil engineering, and also given the fact that we need other ways to fund these infrastructure investments and interventions. So we want to talk about public-private partnerships, tools like street experiments, but also collating road crashes. Currently, our system is very rigid, very formal. It doesn't paint a full picture of where our accidents are taking place. So there's a lot of ways we want to introduce new tools, advocacy as well, which we'll go into a bit in a second. And of course, key partners. I think I've already mentioned key partners. We really want to work across private sector, government, civil society. And for each iteration, those key pillars will be there. The last thing which I'm quite excited about is we want to work from a bottom-up perspective. We want to make safer streets to empower the macroeconomy, to support SMEs, to solve some problems around waste, recycling, waste entrepreneurs. So these safer streets initiatives, it's not a copy and paste from the West. It's a bottom-up approach to create buy-in, to create maintenance and sustainability across our many communities. And the last thing is we want to change now. We're going to, as we conclude phase 1, we will be talking about phase 2 and how you can be part of that to change the status of our streets that are very anti-pedestrian as of now. Now, my presentation will be very short. I do have 20 minutes, and if you have any questions, please pop them in the chat. Any thoughts? If you want to ask a question, I know that's not our program, Rihanna, but please pop anything in there and I'll look on to that.
No,
But
Roland, you
Yes?
do your presentation. Let me facilitate the conversation.
Okay, sorry, Rihanna, I apologies. So just to summarize quickly, we had 3 workshops across the country. Again, thanks to our sponsorship by Uber, Young Urbaners were able to host these workshops in partnership with Rihanna the Bear facilitators and different entities across the country. So the first one we had in Cape Town. I'm calling from Cape Town today, just out of transparency. We had an amazing event where we had a variety of local government officials from urban mobility. We had urban design. We had spatial planning environments. We had people from the last mile sector. We had cycling organizations, young people, an array of people that are quite interested. So we had that first workshop. And from there, we have refined it into something more around how do we understand what the problem is, and of course, to understand each other, what we mean by safer streets. So our second workshop was held in Johannesburg. This was probably my favorite one because it really just showcased the different type of organizations and how safer streets can be approached. After that, we hosted one in Durban. That was the last one. We're here on Florida Road. And again, very similar to our first two workshops where we had a lot of young people with different ideas and ways to approach the topic of how do we make our streets safer. Overall, we had over 110 participants across the 3 workshops. And through that, we've collated a big database. And if we don't have your email address, we'll be asking for that anytime soon. So I think really it was a testament of that the ideas are there, then the demand is there. And we were lucky to tap into that across the 3 cities. After that, we were very lucky to actually attend. So we had our workshops and a few things have transpired since then. Again, our program is very multidisciplinary. It's very transversal. We were lucky due to the RTMC to invite us to the launch of the United Road Safety Campaign Johannesburg. This was a big opportunity where we were actually with Sekadi from the CEO of SAIC, the South African Institute of Civil Engineering, and other panelists, Discovery, to talk about launching road safety in South Africa and what does it mean. I think the points that Sekadi mentioned is that we need a systematic, different approach around our approach to road safety. From a bottom up, how we design our roads. There needs to be a fundamental shift to how we approach it currently from a funding and from a design perspective, and a different way of thinking around how do we value, appreciate, because currently there's not much attention when it comes to road safety, and there's so much more we can do. But it starts with how do we, every road we build going forward, how does that tick the right boxes to make streets safer and not the current status quo? After that, we were lucky to go attend DECREX. And, I mentioned the word tangibility. The reason for that is we were able to demonstrate some of the aspects we're looking to finance through the private sector and civil society. As you can see on the bottom, we have concrete curbs. Concrete curbs is a cheap, tactical way to make cycling lanes safer. We demonstrate how this will benefit beneficiaries like Green Riders that have created over 1,000 jobs in Cape Town alone around decarbonizing the last mile delivery space. They work well with Uber and other platforms. We've also showed tactical bollards. You can't quite see, but there's an image of a modular playground piece that acts as a piece to sit in communities, but also protects vulnerable school children from cars, speeding taxis, and so forth. And at this DECREX, which was not very typical for us, we were able to demonstrate how design can be beyond private spaces into the public domain. Again, tangibility is very important for us. We also demonstrated the first ever modular parklet. So a parklet is where we repurpose a commercial bay or a parking for different use. What we highlighted through the workshops is we need more spaces to sit, more sticky spaces for people to meet, for democracy to unfold, to clash, to have a conversation with your neighbor. We can't just create these dull spaces for cars. So again, as Young Urbaners and our partners, we're looking at different ways to unlock that. And of course, we had a very special forum there with the Executive Mayor of Cape Town, as well as Rob Quintus, as well as the, now Minister for Sport and Safety, Ricardo McKenzie, where we really showed that we need to work together. Sindile Maflanda, a director at Young Urbaners, the Bicycle Mayor, also part of this program. We talked about how we're moving the needle when it comes to how we reform transportation planning, so the design of cycling lanes, NMT, but also the funding thereof. So we had a big forum around that. It was open to the public semi, because of course Decorex was a private space. But again, it showed us bringing officials. Officials were there as well. Very fortunate for Director Slingers from Urban Mobility to be there, and other stakeholders, where we talked and debated and find solutions around road safety. And this is something we want to do across the country, not just in Cape Town. From there, another big update is that we have we've also launched something called the Safe Passage Program. This is our kind of answer that complements initiatives like Josie My Josie, which is a way for us to connect informal and formal areas by having a funding model to fund these public investments. As of to date, we are working on repurposing 2 cycling lanes in Cape Town. We're very much complete. It's been approved by the City of Cape Town. We're currently applying for a wave lever application. We'll be upgrading a Class 3 cycling lane in Bray Street as well as Albert. By adding those concrete curbs and those plastic bollards I just shown. We've done the fundraising, over R1 million, and we'll be implementing that soon and hopefully scaling this across the country. So this is what we're also showing, a cheap and tactical way to make infrastructure. It doesn't have to cost that much to make it safer. On top of that, we're quite lucky to launch our program in Pretoria, the capital city, to Tshwane, where we made, not that significant, but we made 2 intersections in Dr. Solomon Shrangu and Linwood Drive load shedding free. This was successfully launched, and the next project will be looking at a safe NMT route connecting Mamelodi to places like Silton and Mainland Main and so forth. So again, this is all unfolding, and we're very hit the ground, and we're here to find solutions. Now, something I'm quite excited about, is some of you that I've mentioned, is we talk about street experiments. And this is a new tool we want to unlock and open source and give to everyone, is where we are looking at for us to quickly and cheaply repurpose a road space, a public space that some of you have mentioned in the comments, for the public. We're doing our pilot with the City of Cape Town. I know I keep mentioning the City of Cape Town, so if you're from another municipality, please reach out to me, where we're demonstrating a tool. Rather than having expensive events permits, we want to have a tool to quickly test out pedestrianization, partial pedestrianization. We don't always think full pedestrianization is the solution, but the bottom line is we want to have quick ways like this, for example, to repurpose our streets through paint, tactical bollards, like I've shown you, planters. So this is a tool we're going to work with, and then we're going to see what reforms we need, bylaw reforms, because currently it's very hard to change a road space. So it's cheap, it's effective, and hopefully our hope is to empower communities with tools they can work with the municipality, but also the municipality around new tools, around how they can test ideas. So let's say they want to do a complete street in Alexandra, but obviously they don't have the money, they don't have the data. We can use street experiments to look at how can we make a change, whether it's an intersection, dieting an intersection, extending a pavement, doing it near schools. This will empower officials. It won't cost a lot of money, easy to maintain, collect the data, change it, and then on that basis, either fully implement or continue on the street experiments. So this is some of the things we want to introduce to all municipalities, and we'll have our first pilot and more up and running, and how we can scale this across the country, not just for our big metros, but indeed to all our municipalities, especially our rural areas where there's not a lot of money. Also, what we also did, we had one-to-one sessions. We've mentioned a variety of organizations on a national level and on a local level. These sessions were very important to us. We are currently partnering with the UCT around data and around their transversal program for safer streets. So we were looking at these partnerships. So if you're from other universities and you want to partner with us, we'll be open to that. We believe in partnerships, as I've mentioned. We've also mentioned, we've met with the South African Institute of Civil Engineering. We're looking at a partnership there because civil engineering is fundamental to this. And of course, our most favorite partners is the RTMC as well. This will be linked to the previous National Road Safety Summit, and of course, the one that will be happening this year later, which I'll talk about in a second. So again, we had a lot of one-to-one sessions over the last few months. And again, if you're not an organization, please pop that in the chat if you want to meet. The team will meet and we see where we can collaborate or where we can help on the same goal of safer streets. And then, of course, we had a debrief this morning. We talked about the media cycle. What's very apparent is that we need more coverage around the kind of carnage that we're seeing on the roads, and of course the language that are being used. These are deaths, murders, ultimately. And in this instance in the Eastern Cape, where 6 pedestrians were killed by a motorist. So obviously we need more attention and it's be more top of priority, especially for the 7th administration, but also we need a language change and how the media approaches the topic of safer streets. As from our stats is that most of, from the 12,000 to 14,000 people that die every month on our roads, the majority of them are actually pedestrians. So just something to bear in mind, the majority are pedestrians. So we have to ask these questions. Why are we not designing for pedestrians first going forward? So I'll stop there. I hope I kind of gave you guys a summary. We still have time left, but I will allow Rihanna to facilitate and with no any ideas. But thank you so much for listening to me. And if you have any questions about what we have been doing and where we're going, which we'll go to on the second, please reach out to me. I'll populate my email address as well as my WhatsApp number. I'm very you can reach me very easily, and we look forward to ideas, to new partners, and see where we can align and not duplicate and work together. Thank you, Rihanna, and thank you for your time.
Thanks, Roland. Thanks for that amazing summary of a lot of work that has been done. And I think the most exciting thing is to begin to see it move away from talk into action. So Roland, if I could ask you to stop sharing for now. So colleagues, I know that Roland wants you to use the chat, but the facilitator in me is going to ask you not to use the chat right now. Going to invite you then to really be in conversation with each other. I've been quite intrigued by who's in the room. Jerry from UJ, when we did the session at Mzini, we were right up the road, in fact, from your Auckland Park campus. And it's a pity because, clearly we could have included your students there. But I know, Hanifa, that you had an issue with your husband just returning. You were not able to join the Cape Town session, for example. Lee, I remember you had also indicated that you were keen to join a session, but something had come up. So for many colleagues, the fact that you're on this call today means that you are very, very committed. I'm also, fascinated when people like Aisha, who's a chartered accountant, attended the roundtable in Durban, in eThekwini, and also involved with creating employment opportunities for young people. So we want to really open up now the conversation, questions, comments, ideas. I noted that someone had posted how critical data is going to be. But, sometimes when we just post in a chat box, we lose the essence of what people are wanting to convey. So really wanting to open it up a little bit. You've had a sense of what the initiative is, where it's come from. Hopefully we can all kind of now push the green traffic light that we all understand this Safer Streets initiative a little better than we did when we got onto the call, but would be keen to get your perspectives, your ideas. And I'd rather not volunteer, so I would be super keen if people actually indicate that they want to come into the conversation. Hanifa, thank you. Thank you for kicking it off, Hanifa. And if your bandwidth does allow, Hanifa, if you please put your camera on just so that we don't feel like we are all little black boxes.
Let's see. My camera was glitching a bit earlier on in another meeting. So
we see
you can see me.
We see you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So maybe I'll come in first then. So I'm an engineer, and part of our coursework many years ago, they spoke about the 3 E's. So engineering, so what Roland spoke about, your infrastructure and building your roads so that it can be safer, and looking at the way we build things. The second E was enforcement. I mean, your infrastructure is only as good as the enforcement with regards to, making sure people use it properly. But the third E, I think maybe I just want to bring in here, what I didn't pick up is the education part. So perhaps maybe in this program, looking at how you educate your road users, and not just your pedestrians, but your motorists as well, on how to use the infrastructure that is there. And particularly looking today at how, we have these scooters and these bicycles, delivery vehicles that are now using our road space as well. Do they go through any sort of education on road safety and how to use the infrastructure? So it's maybe just another lens that we need to bring in here. I thought I'd just highlight. Thanks.
Thanks, Hanifa. Yamin, I'm seeing you put on your video. If you're needing to come in, please let me know. Anyone else that wants to pick up, you want to pick up what Hanifa is saying, you want to respond to something that Roland has said, you have a new idea that you feel this initiative should be looking at, would be really keen to hear from you. So let's see if there's anyone else wanting to come in at this stage. Lutando, I had seen you post in the chat box. It's interesting. You had specifically spoken about communities and better communities. Do you, Lutando's at the City of Johannesburg, and he says safer streets equals better communities. Lutando, given the scale of the challenge, in another life, I was the political head of transport in the City of Johannesburg. I was explaining to Roland these boxes of petitions that would come from the Speaker's office with just about every community in Johannesburg asking for traffic calming. Lutando, would be keen to get your perspective as a municipal official on safer streets, and you did attend the session in Westdene, and you're here again today. We're delighted that you are, but would be great to get your voice into the room. Lutando, if you can come in. I know that sometimes people are multitasking and it's not that easy to come in. So if you can't, let us know, Lutando. Okay, Lutando's gone super quiet. Lee, I'm going to invite you in because I recall that you did want to attend the one session, couldn't make it, and you have been working at this for a very, very long time. So maybe give us a sense of the work you do and what your sense is. Is this just another initiative, or do you have some hope for where we're moving with safer streets?
Hi, thanks, Rihanna. I lost my dad recently, so I've been a bit out of circulation. But my NGO, the Road Ethics Project, of which I'm one of 3 directors, we operate very much in virtual space. We try to shift paradigms around the ethical crisis that results from crashes that should have been prevented, could have been predicted, and are not necessarily expensive to prevent. As an occupational therapist by background, I see people with serious crash consequences, life-changing injuries and disabilities, and I fully grasp the cost to society, both in human terms and in economic terms. So our project has recently engaged in a global alliance of NGOs for road safety activity called the Mobility Snapshots. If you Google Mobility Snapshots, you'll come up with their website particular section that details what a mobility snapshot is. And it's basically focused on an intersection and focused on pedestrian safety. And it's a snapshot in time of what is the peak our pedestrian traffic like? What is the vehicular traffic like? And are there any safety infrastructure features for pedestrians? So my dad actually died while we were busy with this, so it hasn't been completed yet, but I'm collaborating with another NGO in the Hammanskraal area to do a semi-rural intersection on what used to be the Lucas Mangope Highway, now known as the Molefe Makinta Highway, which bisects now a great many residential communities, including some informal settlements. So my Joburg mobility snapshot will be on Louis Botha Avenue, which has a lot of urban safety features, and the Hammanskraal one will be at an intersection where there is a 970 learner primary school on one side and residential a residential area on the other, and kids are literally crossing a highway with absolutely no vehicle control, vehicle slowing down mechanisms. And TomTom has in fact given us some data showing that vehicles are doing around 50 k's an hour during that peak period. And so kids are literally taking their lives in their hands. And indeed, that school has lost some kids, and the Hammanskraal United Commuters Voice has been called there by parents to do road safety training with the kids, which is obviously kind of missing the mark when you have such incredibly dangerous conditions for their mobility. Training them on how to cross a street safely is, it's in a way barking up the wrong tree. And so by operating in people's headspace, we're trying to bring about a paradigm shift, both in road users of all categories, but also very much in road designers, policymakers, and law enforcers. So we're not yet done with our snapshots, but we will be getting a star rating for our particular sections of road from IRAP, the International Road Assessment Program, and specifically a star rating for pedestrian safety. We're expecting both intersections to rate pretty badly, but we won't know until we get the analysis back from IRAP once we've submitted all the data. That's just one example of the projects we do.
Thanks, Lee, and really sorry about your dad and his passing, and very understandable if you've had to slow it down rather than speed it up right now. Perfectly understandable. Lee,
Thank
just
you.
to get your perspective on kind of, and Ofense, thank you for the post into the chat. The link to the mobility snapshots is there in the chat. But to get your perspective, Lee, on this Safer Streets initiative and what Roland has presented, really keen to get your thoughts as someone who's worked for a long time in this space.
Well, I've obviously pricked up my ears, particularly around the Joburg part of the initiative, and Alex in particular. It's a low-income community less than 3 kilometers from my occupational therapy practice and the offices of the Road Ethics Project. So I marked myself as yellow on the traffic light survey, mainly because I've heard of the project, but I wasn't really aware of exactly what it's done, and I haven't been able to be part of any of the round tables. So I'd love to get involved in some way, and I'm not sure what would be the best way. I'm also extremely time-strapped and resource-strapped at the moment.
Thanks, Lee. And I'm sure Roland's going to pick up with you. And Roland, if you want to kind of step in as people are inputting, please feel free to chime in and come back, and the same goes for Ofense. But Lee, you were, of course, at the summit that RTMC hosted sponsored by Uber late last year. And for those of you who were not there, just going to give you a little bit of a sense of, it's very difficult, of course, often these kind of multimedia presentations don't do absolute justice to the kinds of conversations that were had, but maybe we'll just give you a quick flavor of what happened at that event. So Fahima, if you can play that video for us. And also anyone else that wants to come into the conversation, please just raise your virtual hand and let us know.
Hi everyone, my name is Ofente Madisha. I am the head of public policy for Uber South Africa, and today we're having our road safety summit. Come see.
Typically, this is where we discuss some of the key issues that are impacting. This is talking about the lives of South Africans on a day-to-day basis.
Why are we doing this? We are hosting this summit because road safety is about people's lives. If you're seeing 14,000 deaths, that is 14 livelihoods, families, communities affected at a time. Our goal here is to kick off the discussion for everyone, not just for Uber, not just for government, not just for the stakeholders that are in the room, but for every single person who's affected by the carnage that's happening in our streets and the carnage that's happening in our cities. What is the goal of the summit? At the end of the day, we only want two things. One, action. Two, 365. Those are the only two objectives that we have. Over the next 5 years, our goal is to see a scenario where we're reducing fatalities by 50% in a collaborative, action-based and constructive manner, all based on science, evidence, and the real commitment to saving people's lives. Thank you for everybody who came through, and we really, really appreciate your time. So let's save one more life and let no one be left behind on our road to safety.
Thanks, Ofense, for sharing that clip with us from work that has also happened under the Standing for Safety banner. And of course, we have noted that just Susan, just before the election, I think a month before the 29th May elections, there was a massive universal accessibility summit that was held at Birchwood, and it was a combination of the presidency, the Department of Transport, as well as the Department for Women, Children, Youth, and People with Disabilities. And of course, Shona Cook played a very important role at that summit. And noting that Minister Chikunga, who was the former Minister of Transport, has now taken on that portfolio, it does feel like the possibility of picking up some of the commitments that were made by government at that summit is also something where safer streets can move into. So Susan, I'm wondering whether you want to just tell us a little bit about Shonaquip and how you're feeling about Roland's presentation and what Safer Streets is doing.
Thanks, Rihanna. It does seem to be in our first last mile journey that one step forward seems to mean two steps back. But as always, it's temporary, and then a little bit of time later, we were able to make progress. One of the things that has come up in our arena since the summit is actually needing to get recognition for the first last mile transport service to be recognized as a public transport service as opposed to a medical device. The device cannot be self-propelled, but there does seem to be a lack of thinking at various organizations, whether it is a medical device or a public transport service. And obviously with UNCD happening at the moment, we're saying that this is a solution for emergency services when there are disasters, natural disasters, etc., and particularly needed for scholar transport. So yeah, it's always interesting to see the presentations by others in the industry, and we will keep pushing forward and seeing whatever methods we can to further the industry as a whole. And I'm very interested to hear Roland's what Roland has to say, particularly about urban rural roads, obviously being my area of interest in future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Susan. Lebogang, your question is not out of scope at all. I think it's a critically important question. I know you've posted it in the chat, but I'd love to invite your voice in. Tell us who you are and just reframe your question. And then I'm going to allow Roland to start one round of responding, and then we can take the conversation further. So Lebogang, if you are able to come in with your voice, that would be great.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, at the city of Tshwane, the capital city in South Africa, there's a whole lot of criminal activities that happen in our roads, whether it's at night or during the day, whatever, or during the traffic itself, would have people just out of the blue come to your car, smash your brakes and take whatever that it is, whether it's your bag in front that you have, your phone or whatever. Just get pedestrians crossing the road and attacked and taken, get their stuff taken from them with just random car hijacking. So my interest was on that also. I understand we're talking road safety and traffic and all that. I just wanted to know if in future there would be anything that we can do to assist law enforcement, because I think the implementation of law enforcement takes a bit of time. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm going to invite in Roland to respond, but Lebogang, just before Roland, Najan, this might be a good time for you to just talk a little bit about smart communities and the vision that smart communities have for safer spaces in the broadest sense of the word.
Thanks, Rihanna, for bringing us in on this part of the conversation. Yeah, so the idea behind smart communities is to get community-led activism going, to get community voices heard at the right levels by all local stakeholders, as well as various levels of government. So around the issues that we are talking about is to ensure that these issues are documented on a daily basis by the community themselves. The community can actually measure what are their key issues and what they would like to tackle, and then engage with the local stakeholders, such as the ward councillors, city management, city relationship and urban management divisions, in order to fruitfully find solutions and then to ensure that those solutions are implemented by a combination of the city and the community together. This will improve relationships between local government as well as the communities as well, because the communities will feel heard, you'll feel that their issues are being tackled, and you'll have less resistance from the community against local government as well, which can only just improve how South Africa operates. Thanks, Johanna.
Thanks, Najan. And I think Aisha had posed a question, and then as you were answering, but Roland, it might be useful for you to also weave in Aisha's question as you come in together with Ufense, if Ufense would like. Aisha's question is around how buy-in from local municipalities is being sought and building bridges between communities, municipalities, and government. So Roland, over to you. And Lee, thank you for that post about the SADC summit that is upcoming as well, the SADC Alliance of NGOs for Road Safety. Really grateful for you sharing that with us as well. Roland, over to you.
No, thanks so much for the comments, the inputs, the ideas and questions. Look, I think in terms of the first question from Aisha around local municipalities. So obviously we're starting with the 4 big metros, Cape Town, Tshwane, Johannesburg, and eKhune. We are going to engage with all those municipalities, especially when we now wind down with phase 1 into phase 2. We already have a very good relationship with the City of Cape Town, as well as, well, actually all municipalities actually, but we will be more formalizing it. That obviously we want to keep it as agnostic and open as possible, and not put any red tape, in front of us. And then to your second part of the question, I think that's a very good question. How do we build that community's trust? So obviously that's our, that's why we work with the Barefoot Facilitator, is that our approach as Safer Streets is very kind of bottom up, right? We're not here to duplicate process, but understand existing initiatives, right? And then give them support, new tools, financing, and as well as advocacy and change. So ultimately, where that's our approach. And then, of course, additionally, we'll be utilizing new tools. So one of the new tools will be, how can we report through community? So co-creation around road fatalities. So understanding a precinct, a school, an area around the school. So those are the tools we are looking at with UCT and other partners. And then additionally, like smarter communities. These are the tools we'll be curating, and then kind of trying to, how do we get more buy-in from other stakeholders? So it's very important that, if anyone has any ideas and tools to connect that, because at the end of the day, we're not government, right? We don't have the resources as government, but we're here to work with government, support government, and also show through a pilot how this can be done, and let's see how we can scale that. So I hope that answers those questions. So this is an ongoing refinement, and it's a big thing. What we've found with NGOs is that they have relationship with communities where government does not. And it's not because government's bad, but in some instances it's just so complex, given what has transpired in the last 30 years and all the kind of crises we are facing. So that's an ongoing work. In terms of the other comments, rural safety, 100%. I think, while we are focusing on the big cities, I think it's an opportunity for us, perhaps, if Uber and others will indulge us, to look at other pilot case studies. And of course, this program is open to work. Offense, I see your hands up. Do you want to say something?
Roland?
Yes.
I'll invite Offense in.
Oh, sorry. Okay, sorry.
You will work me out of my facilitation job.
Okay, apologies. In terms of in terms of rule 100%, we will be looking at other case studies. I think that's very important. We can't just be urban; we have to be rural, especially around low-cost interventions and those benefit those benefit analysis around these interventions. In terms of, the scope around not just trying to reform engineering guidelines, funding of national, local, and other initiatives that we can support public-private partnerships, we also want to look at safety and crime. We can have nice, completed streets, but if we don't address the safety issues, it's still a problem. Something that we are doing now is in Cape Town is we're collaborating with a lot of CPFs, so that's called community police forums, which is mandated by national, that works with provincial and local governments, and currently we're actually now in a partnership with the Western Cape government, CPFs, and a City of Cape Town, around where we kind of co-finance to get police officers around on bicycles and be on the foot. The current model of everyone being in the car is not very efficient, so we're trying to get police officers on the ground. But the biggest problem is the funding thereof, all those police officers. So there's a lot of other challenges. Again, we're quite hopeful with the new administration and the change in government, well, not change in the current edifice. So, but those things are forthcoming, and it's also part of the scope. So it's definitely relevant. So thank you so much for putting that up. I'm aware I can't fully answer that question. What we can do, again, we're not government, but these are the things we're trying to look at and finance and support where we can. And of course, lobby governments ourselves. In terms of the first comment from Manifa, thank you so much. I think that's really great. Something that we want to work with SASI is around engineering reform, education reform, as well as, especially from a last mile, first mile perspective. It's not just the infrastructure, but also it's the behavior and of course the maintenance thereof. Again, the cool thing about street experiments is very easy to maintain, and it's something to test our data and collect data and go from there. The last, I think, big question is around, that was mentioned by Dr. Lee sorry, Dr. Randall, apologies, is very exciting. I think what you guys are doing at the Road Ethics Project, that's something we would love to listen and meet up and see we can. We understand you guys are time constrained, but the whole idea is if there are initiatives like these, contact us. We're not here to create a new process, but rather try to collaborate and work with one another as much as possible. Our method is to be transversal, to cross-pollinate. So ultimately, I think initiatives like these are brilliant, especially around data. You mentioned TomTom. I think that's exciting. That's something we're challenging around how to get more data to really understand the situation and overlap that with infrastructure, cycling lanes and so forth, and state of pedestrian walkways, intersections. That's a big focus for us as well. So I'm very happy that you're looking at intersections. There's a beautiful case, don't give up on intersections. I think probably one of the most dangerous areas in this whole country is intersections, slip lanes, signalization that are little, no protected signalization, lack of universal access, lack of lighting, white, the list goes on and on. But and then, yeah, I think in terms of this, what's happening on the SADC level, that's something we would love to be part of as well. It's really great to see that it's not just it's not just domestically, but what we could do on a Southern African level. So again, all these initiatives, please share so we can see how we can support, how we can align, and also learn from that and share resources, share data, and support. Because at the end of today, we have little time and little capacity. I hope I've addressed all those questions. I'll stop there. Thanks, Rihanna.
Thanks, Roland. There's also a question from Liesel, and maybe people can chime in after we've had Ufense on how can we get taxi associations to become part of the solution. I think in your initial description of the graphic, you had kind of pointed out the different stakeholders. Minibus taxi was definitely there. And I think Liesel's question is one we all need to apply our minds to. Ufense, over to you.
Well, thank you. And I think a few thoughts. From what I'm seeing is that at the moment, just from the questions, it's quite clear that a lot of what's being discussed so far is consistent with how we're thinking about the next phase of the project. And we are in many ways shopping for key partners that will help us develop and refine practically how we can execute on phase 2. So I'll give an example that maybe pulls together the road ethics, smarter communities, and Shona Quip conversation. So there's a platform that Roland mentioned where we're working with a group of young researchers to help us really map out precisely what causes and what influences a road crash within a community, because people come from somewhere and they go to the main road or they interact with the road infrastructure or the streetway itself. And I think it's crucial for us to be able to pinpoint these roadways, get the snapshot, and then go deeper in terms of engaging with the communities to develop and articulate what actually works for their use case and environment. So I see a lot of interesting overlaps that can span between urban and rural communities. It's really a matter of us, at least on the back end, refining and structuring phase 2 so that it takes on a participatory approach, even from a partner perspective. So I don't want to jump the gun to the next half of the conversation, but I'm really looking at it from how do we connect the dots, because all the ideas are here, all the skills are actually in this room for us to pinpoint locations, identify how these locations and risks can be resolved, and then develop specific tactical solutions that may be prioritized and funded.
Thanks, Ufense. I think that that's critically important, just the wealth of knowledge and know-how that there is in this room of whilst it says 39 and at some point it was up to 41, we actually have more people because in some rooms there are other people who are physically present as well. But that there's such a wonderful and rich mix of perspectives. Roland, do you want to come back on the taxi association issue at all? And then I think whilst you have the floor, you can begin to move to the next steps conversation as well.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So look, we're already starting to engage with taxi operators. We have partners like Loop Taxi, that's a solution within the taxi industry, and then we will be definitely at some stage try to engage with Santaco. I think that's a must. I think the minibus taxi space is the lifeblood of our economy, of our cities, and we need to work particularly for, and it starts with that last mile. Most people have to walk in, and they walk in groups, right? From where they live to where they get a taxi. So it's that whole picture. So 100%. Taxis need to be part of the process. Even for our other partners, our public-private partnership is we're looking at how can we retrofit taxis to become greener, but then also how should that opportunity look at other ways to help support. I mean, there's also great work that was done by the Blue Dot program. I know that it's quite a big debate. Do we fund, do we subsidize? But for us, at the end of the day, it's about safety, but also then not to impose ourselves onto the taxi drivers or taxi owners, but also understand everyone's kind of concerns and need. And of course, we can't meet all those concerns, but where we can from a safety perspective. So 100%, any kind of contacts there, we would appreciate. Again, our contacts list is growing and growing. We're very lucky to have key partners like RTMC, like Uber, like Rihanna and her history in the space and others. So any kind of context, let us know. But we're here to engage with all modes of transportation, not just non-motorized transportation users. So thank you so much. It's a great point.
So Roland, Lee has added, and I want to echo her view, that Theo Malele from the National Taxi Alliance, he is not just a phenomenal road safety activist, he's also a really keen environmentalist. I'd had the good fortune of traveling with Theo to Bogota, and we've kept in touch ever since. But there's a definite contact, Roland, of someone who is committed to issues of safety in the minibus taxi sector and is actually the spokesperson for the National Taxi Alliance. So let's then allow Jerry. I think you've indicated just before you move, Roland, because we've been saying a lot about partnership between communities, civil society, government and organizations. We have a number of people from academia here. Jerry, I'd love to invite you to come in at this point.
Okay, thank you, colleagues. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I'll try to switch on my video as well. I've got a new laptop, so I'm still figuring out how it works. Yeah, I think this is a great initiative. I've seen, I missed a couple of roundtables that I've seen on LinkedIn, but I've always came across them after the effect, and I couldn't join. So thanks to Ifenze for inviting me to this one. Yes, in terms of academia, where I see participation is through students, really. And I'm glad I joined here. So I'll have an opportunity to speak to Mark, hopefully, around West Dean issues. I have, at the moment, a student that's researching on the rideability of cycle lanes in West Dean. And so it's interesting what's going to come out of that. We're going to look at safety aspects as well, I suppose, but it was more about the topology of the area. Is it conducive for cycling? And does it have an impact on the safety aspect of it as well? Yeah, so hopefully, Mark, outside of this, we can chat if you're listening. Yeah, so, but what I've also like to do with students is to expose them to such initiatives and to get to join a group, a community of people where they can participate and put the theories that they study in the books and stuff to reality, but through participation in forums, getting ideas from other people. I think it will enrich them and it's beneficial to the community as well. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to participating. Myself personally, I'm interested in spatial transformation at the larger scale. But of course, you can't do it at the larger scale if you don't do it at the street level. Yeah, so thank you so much, Chris.
Jerry, delighted to have you in the space. Look forward to have you, your student cohort, join the community. And I see Mark has already shared his details in the chat. So fantastic. So Paseka's been listening here behind me attentively, and he wants to come in as well. So Paseka, if you just introduce yourself.
My name is Paseka Soloto from Slovo Park Informal Settlement, working for giving a facilitation support to the barefoot. There's only one thing which came, but now it was been said about the taxi associations. But on the inspect of taxi associations, I think the most people that needs touches and touches there are the drivers, because they are the ones who are always on the street. Because you go to taxi associations, you get the owners or you get the chairpersons of the associations. You get, sorry to say that, you'll get the arrogancy of people who are just in the office, but they are not part and parcel of pedestrians and communities on the streets, because they are only on the office. The only time they meet the people is when they drive past those people coming from the office. But the most important people are our taxi drivers. Our taxi drivers are the ones who are always on the streets. You see, if some help can get there to them also, to be taught something or shared something with them, I think it can be critically important for a safer street.
Thanks, Paseka. I think that's a critically important point you're making, because I know certainly Theo Malele is he's always in his car. So I think, and I remember taking taxi drivers on a walk of the inner city of Joburg. And they're like, can you just move all the informal traders? They're the problem. They're taking up the space that's meant for pedestrians, right? And I was like, okay, then tomorrow the informal traders. So, I mean, the complexity of how we change space, it's not easy. And the extent of the needs of different stakeholders. But Roland, you've got next steps lined up for this project called Safer Streets. So we'd love to hear where the team is thinking of taking it next.
Sorry, guys. I really love that. It's obviously who do we plan for, whose perspective, right? And I think that's very beautiful. It's the taxi drivers, perhaps not the owners, in terms of their perspective where it matters. And perhaps just to reiterate, Safer Streets is not a young urbanist project. This is a project for everyone. We're just lucky that we have a supporter like Uber and like Rihanna from the Barefoot Facilitators. But this project is open up to anyone. So if you're an organization that has an existing initiative, anything, we want to co-partner, co-create. This is not ours. We're here to obviously help create it and make sure that it has the impact that we said we want to do. And perhaps we can't be the role of government, but we'll most certainly work with government to support, to understand their constraints. And then, of course, positively advocate towards them, understanding their situation around change when it comes to, yes, we want to effectuate apartheid spatial planning, but it starts with designing our streets for people, not for private cars. And of course, it's interlinked to other things around housing, around inclusionary housing zoning, around public transportation that's safe and reliable, around supporting last mile delivery workers, around supporting taxi drivers and so forth. So 100%, we can't solve everything, but we need to interlink, collaborate. And this is the initiative that we are doing thanks to our support for all the other organizations. And of course, we bring organizations like RTMC, like hopefully the National Department of Transportation and others on board with our city partners and our city allies around how we can show change through a living city lab. And then, of course, indeed, go to our many rural areas that need these low-cost interventions for change. Because designing our roads for safe for informal settlement users, for pedestrians, for scholars, for school, is not expensive. We can easily repurpose, but it takes political will and official political will to prioritize us, not private cars. So what are the next steps? I just want to reiterate our timeline. So as you can see, we've started this year where phase one consists of mapping. So we're currently building up a big database of maps of layering crash data around state of cycling lanes, pedestrian walkways, high pedestrian activity zones, certain zoning, public spaces, green spaces, taxi routes, BRT routes, anything. So if you have any data sets or any data, please share with us or be in contact. As you've mentioned, we've done workshops. We've done the 3 workshops and there'll be more coming. And then, of course, we also did a bit of a piece on cycling, because sometimes there's a bit of a wrong perception that cycling is this white man support, when it's not the case. You have people from Mamelodi, Diep Sloot, Masipleme in Cape Town cycling, people earning, 2,000 to 6,000 rands a month. And they need to be one gas of petrol is a second-hand bicycle necessarily. And of course, we not expect people to cycle given our spatial apartheid violence spatially, but people do cycle and short trips, last and first mile trips with the recent change of the Land Use Act. Very significant. So how can we make that safer? So we did a piece on that, but again, we want to overlay all our data. So we're currently in June. We're now winding down phase one, and that's hence we were speeding it up, hence the name of the webinar. So we've consolidated all your thoughts. And then as Offensa was saying, is now we want to open up phase two in terms of other partners around creating work streams, creating a community, creating new tools, unlocking new tools, and of course, more public engagement, because ultimately we have to advocate to the public what safer streets looks like, what does it mean, and of course, how to involve them, both decision makers and the public at large. So that's phase two. And then, of course, phase three, which is perhaps the most daunting and most exciting, is where we are trying to look at what interventions can we have from the work that we have done through public-private partnerships, new tools to work with municipalities to make changes, to show if we make these changes, these are the cost-benefit analysis, these were the benefits, and actually document that and open up a tool that can be scaled and shared across the country. We don't want to be gatekeepers of these tools. We want to open source. We want to help with financing where we can, where possible. And we want to demonstrate models like Safe Passage, like Josie My Josie, and new tools like street experiments to make change in our many communities in need across the country. So that will be phase three. And of course, we'll be working with you around how we can design that, what's a methodology, and then we'll be helping with working with municipalities in this instance so that we get our wave leave applications, get the support so that we can show change, and hopefully we build capacity, build new tools, and build a better country around how do we make streets safer, even if it means saving one life. So feedback is ongoing. We're very hungry. So that's why we had this session after my last presentation. I assure you, we'll be having another conversation piece and then we'll be concluding, but feedback's always ongoing. What will, so if you want to give more feedback or maybe capture your email address, you can scan our survey with your phone. I will actually, let me just do this. If you just entered, sorry, I'm just going to see how I can exit my screen so that I can populate the link, which will be, I think, easier. So apologies, I'm not very smart when it comes to technology. I am not youth anymore. Oh, that's for everyone. So yeah, so any feedback, just to capture your email address, we have a database. If you have any existing databases you can share, please do. We really want to build a database, and this information, obviously we're aware of the Poppy Act, but we want to share our resources as much as possible, invite anyone, any individual, any organization in this space to work with what they're doing around how can we make streets safer. And then, so feedback's always going, and perhaps perhaps the most controversial, and please forgive me for this, and I assure you, we did a lot of thinking before we're going to come to this position. But for us to go forward, and rather than having these sessions whether it's in person or virtual, is that we do want to create another WhatsApp community. I do apologize. Now, this WhatsApp community will be completely separate from Young Urbanists, from Uber, from any other organization. It'll be on its own, and there'll be different streams that we're going to develop. So, for example, if you're interested in civil engineering reform, if you're interested in new tools around data collection, if you're interested in if you have your own ideas around advocacy, around funding for more funding with better conditions around how we design our streets, that'll be a stream for that. If we want to ban slip lanes, that'll be a stream for that. All these small things. If we want to talk about the holistic picture on safety, crime, there'll be a work stream for that. So this will be our answer, and I've also popped the link in the chat, is around creating a community for our different cities. We can open up to different cities, to different towns, rural areas, but there's no other platform, sadly, besides WhatsApp around how can we, consistently engage with everyone, get feedback, support, and communicate what's happening. If you guys will be interested in email only, that option will be there as well. We'll have your email address, so we'll also be updating you by email. If you want to be engaged and ask questions and really be engaged, or just observe, you might not contribute, but doesn't mean you're not contributing. So my recommendation always is to join a WhatsApp group and then archive, so that it's not in your main area of communications with loved ones and family and personal. But I really do apologize, but is Lebogang, what QR code is not working? Apologies. If it just and I'll,
so Roland, the one that's not working is the one with the Google Forms. The WhatsApp one is fine,
okay.
But I think Roland has posted a link.
Yes, I have,
to the Google
exactly.
form. But Jerry's got a hand up as well. Jerry, you want to come in?
Thanks, Jerry.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I figured my video now. I think.
Yay!
Okay, this is me. I don't know if Roland, you're done with the presentation. Maybe you're gonna cover what I was about to ask. So I have a serious issue with South Africa, right? And a lot of people may have the same issue, that we talk a lot, we plan a lot, we put together these communities quite a lot, but on the ground there's nothing, And one of the things I'm looking forward to here, and the question that I had, and I think Ofenze touched on it a bit by saying at some point we'll be looking at the funded project where we can implement. So the question is, in terms of the next steps, is there a pilot project that you have in mind, a low-hanging fruit that can showcase that things can be done and we can have a safe street? So tools are one thing, but do we have the Solomon Matangu roads that you mentioned could be one of those low-hanging fruit where you just go in. You can probably get a funding for that, since it's been in the pipeline for Sito of Tshwane for a long time, to showcase that this can be done. And then from there on, you can easily adapt these things. Because what I'm hearing right now, I'm afraid, is something I've been hearing, and it's such a thing with South Africa. We have very good brains, but we struggle to put the brains on paper, on the ground, So I'm hoping that through this, we can start to have piloting. And one of the issues I've always raised is that we don't pilot a lot. I guess, yes, because we're in the built environment space, the price for failure is very high once you have built something. So I guess that's why we don't pilot a lot, but we need to overcome that and start piloting. Thank you.
Jerry, that's a great question. I mean, the whole thing for us is not another talk shop. So this image here, you can see on Bray Street in Cape Town CBD, that project has been approved by the City of Cape Town. We have the funding for it, and we'll be upgrading that cycling lane to prevent Uber cars, sorry if I say, and other, of course, we need to understand the need of the drivers and other e-hailing from stop parking on the cycling lane. So that's happening now, and that's a pilot. Not only are we introducing a new class of cycling lane called a Class 3 protected cycling lane, that, by the way, the City of Cape Town has now fully endorsed, and they're actually using this new tool, part of their own funded taxpayer projects for other NMT across the city. This is the result for the last 2 years. This is happening. And this is a way to make more cycling lanes safer across the country. So not only we're identifying the process for private sector and civil society to do so, but also we're introducing new tools for the cities. So for example, the problems with cycling lanes in Johannesburg is they're not connected and they fail at intersections. So again, that requires more funding, but these things are happening right now. We have a lot of initiatives where they've adopted intersections. Now, we've done that already. We've done 2 pilots at Dr. Solomon Shrango in Linwood. And just out of transparency, I've shared the brochure to the Safe Passage program, so you can read more around the funding model. So that's happening. But of course, there's other organizations like Josie My Josie, Child Safe, that also do interventions in Mama Lodi around traffic calming, that's privately funded. So these things are happening. And if we take this model, we're really excited to connect Mama Lodi to we're looking at Mama Lodi, connecting to Mama Lodi to Silver Lake. So also we're looking at the CBD. We're also going to look at lighting. So these things are happening right now. So as we introduce this consortium called Safer Streets, we're also linking to existing initiatives that are showcasing pilots. But I completely agree with you, Jerry. There's not enough pilots. So it's really our hope through phase 3. We're now at phase 1, winding that down, where we will be we're doing 4 pilots across the country, where we'll have something called this Living City Lab to demonstrate how we have made these changes. So we'll be inviting yourself, Jerry, and others to be part of this consortium to identify 4 streets across 4 municipalities, mainly being Johannesburg, Pretoria, Durban, and Cape Town for now. And then we will be working with players like Uber and others, because we can't just rely on Uber, to help fund these interventions. And we have a model. So you can look at what Safe Passage does, but completely agree. That's very important, and we want to demonstrate that. And yes, Liesel, we will be, hopefully we'll be, and then the other tool we're introducing, which is very important, is street experiments. Because currently, if for us to advocate for something to the city, it costs a lot of money to make changes. So once we have this tool, we'll be doing this in Langa, we'll be doing another pilot in the city, and then of course, we'll want to bring this to Dunoon. So we've been working with spatial planning. Liesel Kruger is actually on this call. Liesel, thank you so much for being here. Where we will be piloting something like street experiments in Dunoon around a school, not to pedestrianize, but actually extend the pavement, make it safer, and have a bit of a bike bus program potentially as well. So these things are happening right now. But again, we have limited time, limited resources, and we need your help. We can show you the tools, we can show you the models, we can work together, we can bring big stakeholders like RTMC. We're going to talk about the next national safety summit and how this will be beyond the typical norm. But these things are happening. So I want you guys to look at this workshop, that there are others that are doing things, and so as are we. And this is not another talk shop, but it does involve both advocacy, changing policy, funding, prioritization, institutional capacity, values of officials, values of politicians, as well as showing pilots. And those 2 go hand in hand, but they are happening, and we're not going to do another talk shop or set up another community. I don't know, Offensive, maybe do you want to give your view on that? Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
Gonna ask you to pause. Thank you for the next steps. Let's open questions, comments, critiques, criticisms, anything that you want to bring in at this
Oriana,
point?
I'm not sorry, just 2 more points on the next steps. I do apologize.
Okay.
Is
Please, let's
that
go.
we'll also be at the Safer Smarter Mobility hub this later this year with a variety of, again, all your typical stakeholders. And this is actually the first ones knowing about this, but we will, as a consortium, create the active mobility and universal access stage. And through that, we'll be looking at how can we fund these initiatives, and also demonstrate the commercial value of investing in safer streets, but also the other supporting tools to support economies, to solve congestion, to deliver foods and services. And the last thing is that I have been mentioning, I know I've probably called this something a bit different, but we will be at the Road Safety Summit this year as well. And I'm sure the team won't be doing business as usual, and we'll be working with the team around creating this and how can we do it a little bit different to really show that we can't have these talk shops every year. We need to act now. Government needs to play its part, but this is what we can do with government, civil society, and the private sector and academia. Thank you all. Thanks, Ron. Apologies for the I'll stop there.
No, thanks, Roland. I think it's super exciting, and the Smarter Mobility Africa stage, as well as action-oriented summit. Less talk, more action would be fantastic. I'm noting Liesel's comments about maintenance, but let's open it up now. Anybody that wants to comment, criticize, critique, add, please let us know. Raise your hand, virtual hand, unmute yourself. That will be great. Hey, Siko, thank you. And then Lisa.
Thanks, Rana. Thanks, Rana. Yeah, great presentation by Roland. And yeah, I think there's been some really amazing contributions here by everyone. And I think we shouldn't take it lightly, as you're saying, that there's brilliant minds. How do we now take it a step further and linking to what Offensive was saying in that short clip, action, so very important. I just wanted to see whether there's any alignment in terms of the SDG and any SDG alignment for this particular program, because I think it'll be quite important to link that in. Why I say that is because, yes, we are localizing intervention, localizing action, but how do we link it to a more to the global lens and make it fit into that? So I think there's multiple, I think, but I think how do we tick maybe just 3 or 4 SDGs and then link them to the program or the project itself. Thanks.
Thanks, Siko. Liesel, I saw you post there many SDGs, but let's invite your voice in as well, because your hand was also up.
Thank you. Apologies. I've got a bad cold, so I'm not sounding like myself at the moment. But yeah, I totally agree with the SDGs. I really, really believe in everything in me that there is external funding available for Africa if we are smart about it and we align whatever we're doing with the SDGs. That way you attract funding that we don't have inside. I keep on hearing that everybody says, and government, and government, and government. I hear you, but you know that the scope that we have with the little bit of money that we have is so limited that you can't get to everywhere that you would like to get to. So we need to empower communities to kind of actually start thinking about how they contribute to that, how they start taking that civil ownership of our public spaces and our streets. And so I think in that sense is how do we maximize that branding or the packaging of the needs so that we attract funding? So I think in terms of the SDGs, really think about how we could do that. There's the Bill Gates and the Northern Hemisphere owes us. And then the other thing was about, I think the biggest, from where I'm sitting always, and I'm here as, I really want to say as an individual rather than the city of Cape Town, looking at the practicalities of how government works. I was in private sector, I was in government. Maintenance and management of these places. It's wonderful to we like all these ideas and let's change it and paint it and color it. And then the depot says, but I don't have that paint in my depot. And I don't have the guy to go and paint it every 6 months. And I don't have that and I don't have that. So instead of kind of like nearly putting the onus always on government, we as society need to stop abdicating our roles and our responsibilities to maintain spaces. Now, in a country where we've got limited job creation and all that stuff, how can we really utilize this to create jobs? Who are the maintenance groups that's in communities that can update it? How do we help society to kind of like see this as a job creation for the local community in the local community? So and that again attracts funding through NGOs or support company or whatever like that. So I think this, the thinking that government will always solve everything, the pot is too little to get to everywhere where we need to get to. And therefore we don't see the input and the impact that we would like to see. So we need partnership going forward. And I love what's happening here. Roland, everybody else here, I'm so kind of like would love to be everywhere and do everything. Just keep on going and start showing examples, write it up, promote it, show the case studies that change lives. I was involved internationally with its two professors that worked in the Netherlands and Copenhagen. Over years, they just used student work and they showed how the city changed bit by bit by bit. And later they became famous, Jan Gell, Lars Gemzo, because they wrote books and they showed the case study and how little changes can make a big change. We need to get to the people, not to government, to kind of like make that change and to like say they want to do it. So where's those case studies that people can say, I like this? Sorry for my moment on the bench, but thank you. All the best.
No, I think some very interesting provocations there, Liesl. Thank you very much. Mark, over to you.
Sorry, just finding my unmute button. So I really like the fact that one can start to link this to communities. And you mentioned at the start just some of the community work that we're doing in Brixton. And we really are pushing for communities to take more responsibility for their public spaces. And so it's a strategy that we really adopted in our suburb. That maybe we could probably post some of the information out there, just in terms of activation of public space through events. And we started with the alleyways, and we've obviously culminated last year with the Brixton Light Festival. But it has been an interesting way to look at how people start to take ownership of the streets and of the public spaces and the response to it, as well as the city, and how we can start to build relationships with city through the events in public space. So we're currently writing a report for City Parks just on community-led public activations or public space activations, which once we have done it or finished it, we'd like to then share obviously with everyone, just to see how it's really often about building relationships of trust between the city and the residents, so that the city is also empowered to say yes to the residents and actually let residents do a lot more with their streets than they would usually do. Yes, I will share the report. It's not finished yet. We're busy writing it now for Yanda Roji, and she is also someone that would be good to get into this network.
Thanks, Mark. And I'm proud to say that Brixton neighbors Crosby, and we're between Brixton, Crosby, and Westdean. I think there's some interesting community-led initiatives that we are all trying in our own small ways. So great to have you guys as neighbors. We'd love for you, Jerry and Mark, to get a lot more involved as an academic institution in our space. Okay, colleagues, we are quickly drawing to closing time, and Fahima, who is the creative content designer at the Barefoot Facilitator and also runs a company called Bergenberg, has been working in the background. Fahima, I know you're saying, so for those of you who were at the roundtables and you were trying to make sense of those little graphics that you used at your table activities, Fahima was the one who designed them. When I said to her, people were struggling to make sense of some of them, she's like, that's the point. They're not meant to be completely literal. They, it's the artist's concept and how you receive it. So I think she has created something from today's session. Fahima, can we allow you to share what you've created? Thank you, Fahima. Gift, you want to say anything? So as we remember Ikonya Nyati and the thousands upon thousands of people who have had their lives cut short far too quickly on South African roads, on South African sidewalks, we step in intentionally to act, to do what we can from where we are for safer streets, for safer communities, for a safer country. With that, let me hand it back to Ufense to close the session.
There is a lot to do. And I don't know, it's hard to tell why we are all at least here virtually now in this conversation. But there's certainly a purpose and a reason. And it might be for someone who is not born yet. It might be for someone who's already here. But I really, really hope, and I would like to invite you all to be part of this discussion and help us to at least find a way to intervene, because we can't continue violating the contracts of trust. We can't continue challenging communities and families with lives lost, injuries, incomes and futures tarnished. It's not possible. That's not the future that we want for our country. So I'd like to invite you all. This is the end of phase 1, or the beginning of phase 2. Please join us as we take on the next chapter of this project. Thank you so much.
So I know that we are on a tech platform, and your immediate response is one to get onto the chat box. But if you do have a piece of paper in front of you, if you can just write up as we step into phase 2, what intention you are seeding for this initiative as we move towards action, and just hold it up on your screen, or if you prefer the chat box, let's do it there. So give you a minute to either turn on your camera and write up your intention that you are seeding for safer streets, transformed spaces in our city, and write it up, put it in the chat box. We will send the recording of the session to all attendees. We will send the mural board. Fahima, maybe you can bring the mural board back up at this stage. Just thank you to each one of you for being here. Please do leave your intentions that you're seeding. It's critically important that we consciously step out of the session having planted a seed. Roland says to empower new generation of thinkers, to move the needle, to design for people first cities and show it can be done, create a voice for the marginalized, says Pano. And Fahima, we can take the board off in case there are people who have pieces of paper that they've written on and want to hold that up. On behalf of the young urbanists, on behalf of Uber, thank you very much, Hanifa. Safer, Hanifa, you want to read it out? Struggling to see your camera there.
Okay, yeah, I see it's blurring. Safer public transport infrastructure.
Thank you. Consideration for others, says Susan. Partnerships, Siko, you speak my language. Cities for children. Now that one I can live with, Fancy. To change driver behavior through design, urgent action. Colleagues, thank you very much for taking 2 hours out of your precious lives to be here. And we trust that this is not the last time, and we trust that as we continue to meet, we speed up action. Roland, you have 1 minute to close it.
Oh, me, you've heard my voice too much, so I do apologize profusely. Some really great provocations, questions, and comments, but at the end of today, many of us have tried before, so we're not ignorant of the task at hand. So what we're saying is we have to be consistent, persistent in what we do, and work together. And we really hope that we can open this up to everyone, tap into existing initiatives, and it ultimately starts by each and one of you. So thank you so much for your time, your energy, your passion, and the things that you have done, and of course the things that you'll be doing. So please, as a young South African, do not stop. We need to win this fight. This is not a luxury, it's a necessity. It's not a form of idealism, it's a necessity. And it starts by each one of you. Let's be caring, compassionate, let's listen, but also let's ask those hard questions and be persistent at what we care for, so that we leave a country, our cities, for people that we love. And it can be done. It will take a generation or two, but we have to start somewhere. So thank you so much, and let's do this together.
Those who have created signs, please hold your signs up so that we can get a photograph of all those who have written up something on paper, the good old-fashioned way. If you have done it that good old-fashioned way, just hold up your sign. And Fahima, if you can screenshot that, have a great evening. Further, colleagues, it's been wonderful to have you in this virtual space. Siko, keep yours up there. Thank you. Stay safe. Stay well.